Welcome to Open Mic on Giant TV. I'm the host, Mike Balsam, of this program. Special session, I would think, today. I've got Rob Nicholson in the studio with me. Welcome, Rob.
Good to be here with you.
And we're bringing together Rob and his son, Peter Nicholson, two politicians here, one on the federal scene, one on the regional scene. Welcome, Peter.
Great to be here. Thanks for the invitation, Mike.
So it is kind of special to me to see the father and son coming together in this studio. Rob, you decided just a few weeks ago that you were going to step back and not run in this upcoming federal election in October. What was behind that decision, Rob?
Well, it is a big decision, obviously, but it's about 35 years now. 35 years ago, I got into this business here, and I was fortunate enough to be elected in 1984. It was a dream come true for me, and I'm at the point where I'm the longest-serving Conservative member of Parliament here, and that's 24 years, plus 6 years at the Regional Council and 3 years on the school board, and so I felt the time had come, and I'm very optimistic about my party's chances this fall with Andrew Scheer as the leader, but that being said, I feel now's the time to do it.
Peter, you were 2 years old back in 1984 when your dad was first elected. What was it like, and what did you understand about it in those early years of your dad's position at Parliament?
Well, I was always very proud of my dad. Even from a young age, I knew he was doing good work, and I knew he was doing work to help out his community. So even at maybe not at the age of 2, but as I grew up, I knew he was doing some valuable service there. So always very proud of him.
Now, you followed him into the political sphere. Did you see that coming way back when?
No, it came naturally. I followed in my dad's footsteps, I think, with the practice of law. But with respect to the region, this is something that sort of evolved over time. My interest in the regional issues evolved, and this became the right time for me, and I thought I could make a contribution in a positive way. So I decided to put my name forward and to serve.
Rob, did you give Peter any advice when he ran his campaign? I mean, you ended up, Peter, first amongst all of the candidates for the region in Niagara Falls. That must be quite satisfying. What kind of advice did you give him?
Well, he's been around this business for quite some time, and I have to say, I didn't push him into this. People say, you must have pushed your son. I didn't. He's taken an interest in this for many years now, and he's asked lots of questions over the years about whether it be the region, because I was there for over 6 years, or in federal politics. But that being said, he knows how to do this here, and so when I said to him, we just have to get out there and start passing out pamphlets and letting people know that you're running, that you're there for their best interests, and that was the campaign.
Did you expect him to top the polls?
As a parent, you're always hoping your kids are always at the top of the polls. You know what I mean? But I was very pleased and very proud of the fact that he did so well.
I think a lot of people are asking the question as well: is it too early for you to step into a role that your father is serving right now? Is it too early for you to put your name forward for the Conservative Party candidacy?
My focus right now is with the region. There's a lot of good work that we're doing there at the region. I'm so grateful and thankful to the people of Niagara for this opportunity. So no, I don't have any plans to join the federal race. I've always been very supportive of my father and the Conservative Party. But no, my focus is going to be on the region and the issues that we're tackling there. We're making some great improvements, some great strides, and we recently just passed our first budget. But there's a lot of work to do there, and that's going to be it's going to get my attention going forward.
Will the two of you be involved in the choice of the candidate for October?
I think I could very well be. I'm hoping that a number of people will put their names forward, and there's people that I've known for many years. So we'll have to see how it goes. But as I say, I'm very interested, and I've told the executive of my riding association that I'll be very involved during the campaign. I really like to help out anything I can do.
Now, Rob, you've not just been an MP. You've been a very important MP. When I look at your history, Attorney General, National Defense as part of your portfolio, Justice Minister, Foreign Affairs, government leader in the House of Commons, currently the Justice Critic. So you've really served some very important roles. What was it like when you went to the party, when you went to Andrew Scheer and said, I'm not going to run in this election. How did that go?
I mean,
over?
I broached the topic with him, and he and previous leaders have wanted me to continue to run. Stephen Harper wanted me to run, of course, in the last election, and I know I would have been very welcomed by Andrew Scheer if I had. But at the same time, I mean, he and my colleagues have been very understanding and very, very positive about about this next step. And so, but as I say, this does not detract at all from my optimism and confidence that Andrew Scheer and the Conservatives are going to do very well this fall. And in many ways, it's not a bad time to leave when the party is doing well and somebody else can step into that role. And then certainly that's my hope.
You're both confident in Andrew Scheer as the leader of the party?
I've known this man since he was elected in 2004. They put him on the transport committee with me, and I was immediately impressed by how hardworking he was and how his ability to understand the issues, the common sense that he brought to the table. And I used to tell people, right, this is 15 years ago, I said, this guy is going places. And so over the years, I have, needless to say, served with him and watched him. And so, yes, I've one of the ones right from the start who had great confidence in him.
As a younger Conservative, Peter, you're confident as well?
Yeah, I think he's done a great job. I think he'll continue to do a great job. And I think as people get to know him even more and more throughout an election campaign, that's going to resonate with people, and he'll do well in this next election campaign.
When we look at our current Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, a lot of controversy over the last little while, a big battle almost between Doug Ford and the carbon tax. Will the carbon tax be something that will hurt Justin Trudeau in this upcoming federal election? Will it be the Jody Wilson-Raybould controversy? What do you feel, Rob, right now is the thing that may swing the voters to the Conservatives?
I think the whole mess with the members of his own caucus and his cabinet is going to play a large role in making up people's minds about him. I think it was a huge mistake, and fascinating about these things is you expect it's the opposition parties that launch these attacks or score these points. But what has happened has taken place right within his own party and indeed right within his own cabinet, and the explanations that we've heard don't measure up. And so this has not gone over very well, and I think, quite frankly, they've handled it poorly.
It almost seems like a gift to Mr. Scheer.
Well, you still don't want to see something like this. I don't want to see. I was Attorney General myself, and I was Justice Minister. You don't want to see these things where they don't understand the divide between the two roles. But that being said, both Jane Philpott and Jody Wilson-Raybould stepped forward and made it very clear that they were doing what they believed was right, and they were standing by that. And unfortunately for them, they got the boot from the caucus.
Since that happened, there's been a lot of people calling for a separation of the two roles.
Yes.
Do you believe that that's what's needed?
I didn't believe it was necessary. I was Attorney General and Justice Minister for 6.5 years, which is the longest, I believe, in the last 60 years, one of the longest in Canadian history. And it was very clear to me that there were two roles that I was playing. And I mean, for instance, if somebody was to be extradited out of this country, that wasn't a decision of the Prime Minister and the Cabinet. It's a decision of the Queen, and through legislation, the Attorney General on her behalf. And so I knew about the separation right from the beginning, and my view of this is that members within Trudeau and Trudeau's government there, they didn't understand that there is that division. I mean, it's the same way I've made this comment as well. We have a Crown Attorney here in Welland and St. Catharines, etc. Right. But they're not employees of the Doug Ford government. He's not their boss or something. They represent the Crown. And it's the same way with the Attorney General with respect to the judicial prosecutions or extraditions. There's separate roles. Interestingly enough, as Justice Minister, I was at a number of Commonwealth meetings, and I had a lot of the justice ministers. They were surprised. They said, "You're also the Attorney General?" I said, "Yeah." Sir John A. Macdonald in 1868 put both roles together, but in Britain they're separate, and many Commonwealth countries they continued to be separate. But I never felt any interference. I never felt anything improper. It seemed everybody understood that. But now we have this, and I'm perplexed as to why the Prime Minister wouldn't understand that there are two roles, and he's not the boss when it comes to certain aspects of the Attorney General's role.
You're both lawyers. Do you feel that being lawyers, having a degree in law, practicing law, do you think that prepares someone for those kind of intricacies once they're in Parliament, once they're in the legislature in Ontario? Peter? Even as a regional councillor, maybe you can
There's
comment.
certainly transferable skills. You're dealing with legislation, understanding legislation, interpreting legislation. And in my role as a lawyer, you're advocating for people, you're helping people out. This is what we do at the regional level, and this is what I'm sure my father, he's done quite a bit at the federal level. You're advocating for an issue or for a person. So those skills I think are certainly transferable. When it comes to legislation and getting things done, certainly there's some overlap there, and there's something that I believe that my background as a lawyer and my father's background as a lawyer will certainly help.
I mean, typically what happens when you're practicing law, you've got people who come into your office and they need help. And that's your job as their lawyer, their representative, to do whatever you can. And I've said this to many times over the years to people, as your member of Parliament, when people come to see you, that's right.
Exactly.
They've got issues, they've got problems, they need advice, and so it's really a good fit, the two. Not that there are other professions and jobs that people have that have worked out very well when they have made it to Parliament or to the regional council, but for me, and I think for many of those from a legal background, it's the idea of seeing what you can do to make things better for people.
Rob, you've worked under three prime ministers, three different ones: Brian Mulroney, Kim Campbell, Stephen Harper. Did Kim Campbell deserve more time?
Well, I was certainly part of her government here, and I would have liked to see that. I worked for the 3 years that she was Justice Minister. I was her parliamentary secretary, and I enjoyed working with her, and I was very much supportive of many of the issues that we raised. And so, yes, she didn't have a very long period of time, but that's the world in which we live.
Peter, Dad ever come home from a session in Ottawa and say, "Hey, you've got to hear the joke that Stephen Harper told me in caucus last week"? Anything ever happen like that?
I wish it did. No, he's pretty careful about that, and he understands. What happens at work. We usually keep work and private life separate, and that's the way it's been over the years. Oftentimes when we get together on Sunday for lunch, we usually keep our work and more or less our personal life kind of separate.
Of course.
Yeah.
What can you say, Rob, about the working relationship you had with those three different prime ministers?
They were all very accommodating and very good to me, and I was very proud to have the opportunities. Brian Mulroney was very outgoing, extroverted, and great to work for, and always prepared to listen. And Kim Campbell was very sharp on many of the issues that we had in the justice portfolio, which is the longest period of time. Of course, I worked with her. And Stephen Harper was a great period of time for me. The different roles that he gave me to serve this country with, he always made sense. He was very good analyzing. I mean, it used to be amazing to me that many times I would be as Attorney General or as Justice Minister, new pieces of legislation before the House of Commons that I could understand. I'm into this. I'm a lawyer, but he wasn't a lawyer. But I used to think, Jeepers, I think this guy knows at least, if not more than I do on this particular issue. He was very, very good at terms of working to make sure that he was up to speed. And it doesn't matter which file it was that you you had, Stephen Harper knew all about it. And again, that was something that each of us knew when we were going in to see him, or we had discussions with him, is that this is not somebody who didn't just had a one-page briefing,
Right.
or just wanted to hear it all from you. No. He would know what the file is all about.
I think over the 24 years that you have served, I think Niagara was able to raise its profile, having someone like you being so close to those three prime ministers.
I think it was very important, and it's important for the issues that are specific to this area. I remember back in the I think in the early 90s, somebody said to me, he says, Nicholson, are you obsessed with peaches? And I said, look, if I don't worry about peaches or something, I don't know who else in this country is going to be worrying about peaches.
Right.
That yes, I do worry about peaches. It's like the whole question about seniors. I was told years ago that we had the highest percentage of seniors in my riding in Canada. Now, somebody once or twice, one of my members said, I think I've got more seniors than you, but I say, no, this has to be an issue for me. I have to think about this on all the time because, again, I represent them. It's like the grape and wine industry. It's in fact, I used to brag that I had the largest grape and wine industry in Canada, and my colleague up the road, Dean Allison, says, no, Rob,
Right.
you used to have it. I think I've got more than you have. I said, well, we're all in this together, and we have to do what we can, but you have to keep raising those issues. It's like the border issues here and the infrastructure that we invested in the years that we were in government, and that because it's vital to the best interest of this area. And as my job as the MP, I have to worry about the infrastructure at the borders. I have to worry about the grape and wine industry. I do have to worry about peaches. I have to worry about seniors. I have to worry about the car industry. Those are the kinds of things because they're very specific to this area.
I'm so glad that you just mentioned the car industry because I want to bring something up. And the reason I want to bring this up is it's a little bit more lighthearted. Not too long ago, I ran into you at the Niagara Falls Public Library, and you were getting into this amazing-looking car. Mm-hmm. And there's a story behind that car. And Peter, can you fill me in on Dad's car?
Well, it came as a bit of a surprise to me one Sunday afternoon, and my dad had this twinkle in his eye, and he said, I got to show you something. So he showed me a car that he purchased. Apparently it's the same model, first car he ever owned. And he found it somehow. I'll let you explain that, Dad. But it was, what year was it?
It was a 1961 Envoy. It was put out by General Motors.
And see here, right there, I've mentioned this to a couple of people since that day.
Yeah.
They say, Envoy? What the heck is that? No one really knows much about this car.
I know, and I get a lot of people stare at it when I'm driving, you see, because what had happened was this, that General Motors was getting a lot of fierce competition in the late 50s, early 60s from Japanese small car makers or Volkswagen out of Germany. So they desperately wanted to make sure they didn't have just great, big, large cars. So they owned Vauxhall in Britain. And
my mom, and I think that day I talked to you, my mom drove a Vauxhall.
That's right.
And when we went down the Glendale Bridge in St. Catharines, a one-lane bridge, she could never make it back
that's
up
right.
the top.
It was, I used to tell people that it did have a heating system, but I had to go to Montreal in the wintertime for enough heat to come out of those cars. But what had happened was my neighbor across the street, I was a teenager going to high school in Niagara Falls, and his daughter told me he was junking this car for $50, that the car didn't run that well. And I said, he's getting rid. Does it still run? So I went over, and eventually this man didn't really want to sell it to me, but we cut a deal for $25. So I always remember going down to what's now Service Ontario, and I paying the 3% tax. I had to pay 75 cents, to get the car registered. But I had it, and I had to give it up when I went to Queen's University because I applied for a student loan, and believe it or not, they held it against you years ago if you owned a car. They figured if you owned a car, why do you need a student loan?
Yeah.
So we had to get rid of the car, but I always was disappointed about that. And for about 10 years, I would always go online and ask people in this industry, and I found this car out in Surrey, BC, and it was identical to the car that I'd had. In fact, it was in much better shape, same color, same everything. And so I cut a deal, and my next door neighbor, who's into the business of shipping automobile parts, got the car for me. And so that's the story. But I love it, and it was one of those bucket list things that you want to have.
Did you ever take it up to Ottawa?
I think an Ottawa would be
That
a
was
real
my first
challenge.
question to him.
I mean, when the car is under, imperial measurement, so if you go anything past 50 miles an hour, the car starts to shake. You see what I mean? So these days, when you've got cars are all at around 120 kilometers out there on the highway, it's. I think I'm better off just keeping it, in locally.
Peter, looking ahead,
Yep.
when this election is done and your dad is no longer at Parliament, you're looking forward to that extra amount of time that you're going to have with Dad for the next, once that starts.
I'm always looking forward to having him home more often. I mentioned it before. My dad was someone extremely dedicated to his role as an MP, to his community, and also to his family. So, growing up, he was always there, taking me to hockey practice and spending a lot of time with our family. So we were fortunate in that regard. But certainly when this is all over, he'll be in town more, and that's something that I look forward to, and getting him out on the golf course a little bit more, and will be welcome for sure.
Who's better?
Do you need to ask that?
Sure.
Well, he won't have an excuse now. You see, now he's got all the time in the world to practice.
True. That's my excuse. So much time up in Ottawa.
Ottawa starts about a month later.
Oh, it does. It does. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
I've told people, in fact, I made the claim one time that we have more golfing dates than anybody else in Canada. And I had somebody out in Victoria says, no, just a second. I said, just a second. You get rain out there.
That's right.
And therefore, I said, I believe that Niagara has the most opportunities to play golf. Yeah.
Definitely. Now, I know you haven't talked a lot about what your plans are. You have said that you want to stay involved in your community.
Yes.
Can you reveal anything as far as plans?
One of the things I've always been involved with my church, and but it's been very difficult when I might be on a trip somewhere, I can't make it, or I've got other functions. But that would be one of the things I'd like to volunteer more. And there are certain groups over the years that I couldn't get involved with because there's a potential conflict. Some of them may have interactions with the government or something like that. Whereas now that deck will be cleared for me, and so I hope to continue to be involved and have the best interest of this community at heart.
I have a feeling you're going to be just as busy when you're retired with your involvement.
Right? I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people that want to pick your ear on certain topics, and there's a lot of things happening here, both municipally and regionally.
Yes.
We can talk about regional amalgamation, and why wouldn't it be important for someone like yourself to speak up about what that might look like?
I'm somewhat nervous about what it might look like.
I think we all are.
I remember about a little over 40 years ago when they created the region of Niagara. I mean, it was very difficult for small communities. I mean, I understood why. I think we had about 60 small communities, right, and why there was this amalgamation. But it was very difficult. I mean, I remember somebody in Chippewa telling me, we survived the War of 1812. You know what I mean? We've been here for 150 years. That's right. What I mean? And so. It'll be a challenge. We'll have to see how it shakes out. But I always say to people, I mean, the word Niagara Falls is a great asset for this area. It's known around the world. I don't want to lose that into some larger context. And again, you have people get a great deal of pride. Niagara on the Lake, for instance, people have been there for a couple of centuries. Many of the families, and they are very, very dedicated and entrenched there. So we'll have to see what they're doing. But I mean, the idea of the regional government, I always like the idea of having shared services. I mean, like water, the cleaning of water, cleansing water and providing fresh water.
Right.
It makes sense to have one organization or one group do that kind of thing. Even policing. I understand why we have a regional police in this area.
It's so expensive to operate a police force anyway.
It is. And if you try and divide this up among, dozens of municipalities, I mean, it can be very complicated. So when they put that all together, I said, yeah, this makes sense. So, yes, the government is, engaging in people to talk with this, but again, for the most part, we've had it pretty good here in Niagara. I've been very pleased, with how well run this area is. Yes, there are controversies, but overall, I think we can be very proud.
We have 32 councillors now with that extra councillor at the region. Is there a lot of discussion as to what this will look like?
There is, like my father. I mean, I believe the system we have now seems to work well. The two-tier system with shared services. I believe it's It does work well, but with this issue, it's something that's going to take time. It's something that we should make our input known to the province, and it's one in which, in many ways, though, we do welcome any type of improvement. We all want to see our government, our regional government, municipalities to be more efficient, and whether that's fewer politicians or shared services or different structuring of our services, we want it to work better, and ultimately, we want to keep costs as low as possible for the taxpayer. So this is something that, we have to be part of that discussion. And at the regional level, we want to be part of that discussion as well. I know there has been discussion about setting up a governance committee that's going to advise the province on this. So this is an issue for us regional councillors, and it's an issue that really is going to impact everyone. I think most people should make sure that they get their voice heard and that they advocate their views.
I have one final question to throw to the two of you. Provincial elections in the last year or so, Ontario, Quebec, Alberta, PEI, all went conservative. Is this a sign of things shifting? Peter?
Good question. There's always different issues that's going to dominate every election campaign. And sometimes people want change, and sometimes people see what's going on at the federal level. And, they're unhappy with perhaps the Liberals at the federal level, and this resonates downwards. So it's tough to say. I mean, it depends on the time, and it depends on the election. Yeah.
Rob?
There is an exchange of opinions on this. I've been in many elections, and I remember particularly the 2004 election. The McGuinty government came out with a number of measures that people were going to have to start paying for certain healthcare services. And I remember campaigning. I didn't even raise the matter with them, but I had people saying to me, like, yeah, don't worry, I'm voting for it. Well, you know what I mean? And I was the federal conservative there, but their unhappiness with certain things that were done by the provincial government, transfers over. A lot of people don't make the difference. They don't make the distinctions.
Right.
You see, I tell the story here about a woman who in the neighborhood I used to live in back in the 1980s. Okay, so I remember knocking on her door or saying hello to her, and she said, "I will never vote for you." I said, "Oh." I said, "Could I ask you why?" She says, "How long have you lived in this neighborhood?" I said, "Well, 10 years now." She said, "And why haven't you had this road paved?" And I said, "Well, ma'am, you may not understand. I'm the federal representative.
Yes,
I don't have anything to do with, don't give me that. If you wanted it paved, you would have had it paved." You see what I mean? Because, there's a large group of people and they don't. So if they get mad at the federal government, they might vote for the different party provincially and likewise the same. I mean, if people are unhappy with their provincial government, many times they don't make that distinction and they transfer that to their federal vote.
From your viewpoint, having been in federal politics, is it easier when the province in which you're residing is run by basically the same party as the federal government?
I mean, it's hard to say. I mean, there's a certain amount of infrastructure that goes with each political party, and if the party your corresponding party is in office provincially, there's more people there on the ground involved to help with you. But again, it can go either way. That if people get upset with the provincial government, they may say, just like I've said and I've noticed over the years, they may say, "Oh, okay, I'm going to take that out on them. I'm going to send a message." So I think the Prime Minister's got to be very nervous. I mean, when somebody was saying that there was over 23 million people with the Liberal governments here 4 years ago, and now we're down to 1.3 million. You know what I mean? There's almost nobody left who has a provincial Liberal government. So that's got to make the federal government very nervous. But again, ultimately, it'll be decided, what people think of this Prime Minister and what they think of what the Conservatives, Andrew Scheer and Jagmeet Singh, have to offer.
One of the things that came out, I believe, last week was that Trudeau was accusing Doug Ford of holding back some transfer money from municipalities. Is that a game that can be played by a provincial government?
Certainly, I don't believe it would, or I don't think It is appropriate. I mean, sometimes you'll get these squabbles between every level of government. I mean, the provincial government does not like this carbon tax. They've made that very clear, and they want Canadian people in the province of Ontario to know that they're paying this every time they put gasoline into their pump. And so, needless to say, the federal Liberals are very upset about this. I mean, I've said to them, I said, if you think this is helping the environment, wouldn't you want everybody to know that there's this carbon tax exists? But again, there's very mixed reviews on that, and so you get these fights between the provincial and federal levels, and ultimately, this is what the Canadian public will have to deal with.
Gentlemen, I want to thank you for coming out today. We've run out of time. We've actually gone way over time.
Oh.
We could probably go another hour and a half. I'm really enjoying this. We just had the Honourable Rob Nicholson, MP for the riding of Niagara Falls, and his son, Peter Nicholson, following in his footsteps as a regional councillor in the city of Niagara Falls. Thanks, gentlemen, for coming in. You've been watching Open Mic on Giant TV.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Mike.
Appreciate it, guys.